Well, greetings, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good overnight, wherever you are joining me in the world. I'm Fred Plotkin, and this is Fred Plotkin on Fridays, and my wonderful, beautiful guest is Eugenia Zukerman, world famous flutist, journalist, author, source of inspiration. She's joining us from her home in New York State with her husband, Dick Novick, is there as well. And I have read twice this week Eugenia's book that she recently published. It's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. It's incredibly inspiring. The title is Like Falling Through a Cloud, a lyrical memoir of coping with forgetfulness, confusion, and a dreaded diagnosis. This is the book, which I hope all of you will read. I'm very, very touched by the beauty of the book and by everything that it taught me. So, Eugenia, welcome. What I'm going to do briefly is read from the front flap of the book, and then I'm going to ask you if you would read to us a poem. What it says is, what if the dreaded world of Alzheimer's was also a world of emotional discovery? Eugenia Zukerman's poetry and simple prose, both heartbreaking and ultimately inspirational, ushers the reader into her world as she unflinchingly examines familial loyalties, moments from her past and present, and the need to face an uncertain future due to the diagnosis of a condition that she truly hopes will remain unnamed. Flutist, writer, artistic director of major music series, television journalist, educator, and internet entrepreneur, Zukerman addresses her lapses and losses as she confronts and deals with a future under the shadow of her Alzheimer's diagnosis. Touching, honest, and fearlessly heartfelt, like falling through a cloud, recounts Zukerman's discovery, consultations, and diagnosis, all while navigating the death of her 103-year-old mother, a performance at the Kennedy Center, and the consolidation of her life via a full-time move to upstate New York, as she finds strength in family, love, self-examination, and the enduring power of creating music. Zukerman teaches us the importance of living in the now while accepting that what comes next may remain a mystery. Eugenia, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you wanted to read a poem called My Antidote to Fear.
My antidote to fear. Today I will flute. I will flaunt my flute. I will flute my flaunting. I pick up my old friend made of gold, which makes me feel bold. And what will I play? The piece I start with almost every day. Syrinx by Claude Debussy. His musical portrait of the myth of Pan and Syrinx for flute alone. The lusty satyr Pan eagerly pursued the lovely wood nymph Syrinx, who spurned him. Luckily, in those days, nymphs knew a neat way to deal with sexual harassment: metamorphosis. Syrinx ran to the river, and as Pan was about to catch her, she begged the gods to change her shape. And just as Pan grabbed her, she turned into a bunch of reeds. Disappointed, Pan sighed, and the sound of his breath across the reed was the sound of the first flute. The piece is merely 34 measures long and lasts about 4 minutes to play, which I do almost every day and have done since I was 10, when I imagined myself then as that nymph, and in my mind's eye, I would enter the mystical forest and envision myself racing toward the water, then diving in and being saved. I can calculate that for 63 years I've played Syrinx almost daily, always differently, always dreamily. I've performed it by myself, for myself, approximately 22,995 times, and I never, ever tire of it, and never will, because it's not some goddess that will save me. It's the music. We can't.
We're turning around our camera at the moment. We'll get back to it. There we go. And one of the chief sources of inspiration, really, for everyone is music.
Why?
Try coming in again.
Am I audible? It seems that I was muted. I will try again. So it seems that I was muted. Can I be heard now? Connecting to audio.
No, it's now. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
No.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're very, very, very. I can hardly hear you.
Okay, then I will try.
Okay, perfect. Nope.
Nope, not good.
We hear you now.
You can hear me now. Very good. I'm not sure what happened. Those are the vagaries of technology. But
You got that.
what Eugenia was that you for decades have provided me and so many people with a great deal of beauty and inspiration. And one of the chief sources of inspiration for so many of us in music in difficult times, whether it's a pandemic or any number of reasons. Do you think about the inspiration that music gives you and other people, or is it just a natural part of who you are?
I think it's just a natural part of who I am. I grew up in a household where my mother played the piano. My father had been a singer. So music started from the time zero for me. I heard music from My father used to come into our bedroom, my older sister and I, and he would sing to us at night. So music was a very, very important thing. And I very early on wanted to play an instrument. And a group of musicians from the Hartford Symphony came to my school. And I remember I was 10 years old. I heard the sound of the flute. I ran home and I said, I heard the flute. I want to play the flute. Please, can I? And my parents were delighted that I wanted lessons. So that's how it started for me. And I would assume it starts that way for a lot of young kids. They hear the sound of an instrument that they love and they want to play it.
I think with music education and music as part of education, sometimes it's taught like a pass and a fail, that either you're good at it or you're not good at it. I try to share music as something that gives beauty and inspiration, whether we wind up being performers or just wind up being people such as myself who love it and who live with music all the time. And I find it's always said that music is a universal language, but that's really true.
Mm-hmm.
Notation was invented in Italy, but if you read musical notes in South Africa, in Peru, in India, wherever you are, if you read those notes, they have the same meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Formed is different by each artist, but they have the same meaning. And part of what I feel connects us so much in the world is that we don't have to think we don't understand.
Right.
I try to teach music not as understanding, but as feeling.
Uh-huh.
Opening ourselves to how we feel is very healthy and very good for us.
I agree.
Music is part of our lives. There's another thing, so many things come out in this book, like falling to a cloud. One of the abundance of love and kindness that you have received, but also that you give. And when I read your words, the book is written in poems, but it's poems as a narrative. To me, it was like a big, beautiful song cycle. You travel with the musician, the reader, the writer in your case. And the message was love all the time. And it was so touching and moving to me because I could hear music, but I could feel the love that you were expressing.
Can I just interrupt for a second, because I'd love to tell you how I started writing this book. My daughters were saying to me, Mom, you're losing it. We've got to get you tested. And I was angry at them. But I went and was tested with my younger daughter and came back on the subway to my apartment in New York City, where I then lived. I went up to the apartment. I went into my office. I sat down at my desk and I stared at the wall for I don't know how long. And then for whatever reason, I took out a piece of paper and a pencil and I started writing. I had no idea why I had to do that, but I started writing and everything came out in poetry, in verse. Most of it did. And I have no idea where that came from. I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. But after I had about, I guess, 25 pages, I asked my daughter to read it. And I said, is this anything? And she said, Mom, this is really something. You've got to keep going. So I thank her for that. But every single day, for some reason, I got up early in the morning and started writing. And I almost felt that someone was writing, taking my hand and doing it. I don't know how that happened. I still don't. It was a gift from somewhere. And it was something that kept me strong because the diagnosis is not a walk in the park. And I really think it was so helpful for me to be able to express myself and to, I think from the very beginning, I did not want to be a victim. I'm not a victim type. And I decided I was going to be me who did it my way. And, you know, that was that.
You've kindly agreed to read a few of the poems, and the first one we want to start with is called Marble.
Marbles. Maybe mine are lost, or maybe they're rolling around in my head looking for a place to land, or maybe not. My daughters tell me to get tested. Tested for what, I ask, even though I know for what, but it's for what I don't want to know. So I let the marbles roll around in a swirl of distracting colors because I don't want to listen to them, the daughters, because if I hear them, I will be very afraid. And this mother cannot be that mother, not ever, never.
The next
Getting,
Nope.
sorry.
follows is called Words, and I've found it interesting that they come one after the next. So if you would please read Words, and then I'll come back to talk to you.
Words, they taunt me, tease me, test me when I fail to find them. I know they're hiding somewhere in the dark realm of my cerebellum, floating around, mocking, sneering, shouting, catch me, remember me, speak me. Sometimes it's wise to wait. Wait for one word or the kernel of the word to explode like popcorn and leap onto my tongue, bringing others with it, stringing a sentence together for me to speak. And I say it, all the words in the right order, spilling out of my mouth. And my brain asks me, okay, was that so fucking hard? Excuse me for being vulgar, but.
You're not say that word on my show. Someone said it last week, so it's becoming a December tradition. What I love many, many things in these poems and in your expression of them is how revealing you are of yourself and your feelings. There's an honesty, there's a directness that I hope it helps you, it helps other people. Was your intention when you wrote these to really explore yourself or to explain to others, or both?
I was just trying to keep myself above water. I think getting a diagnosis is a death sentence. That my diagnosis is a death sentence. And you can either get under the covers and cry, or you can say, I'm going to live as fully as I possibly can. And so that's why I did it. I don't, as I said before, I don't know, how it happened that it just sort of spilled out of me. But it was a gift to me. It's as if somebody was with me, and it helped me enormously.
Before we went on air, I was telling you about my father, who was a musician, and he too had a death diagnosis of a different type. And I said to him, yes, it's a diagnosis, but you're still alive and we're going to do beautiful things and meaningful things.
Mm-hmm.
And I made sure that every day of his life was filled with beauty and inspiration. And
Mm-hmm.
was doing things that he always liked to do, or perhaps doing new things. So one thing that he liked to drink wine. I called up people at the vineyard whose wine he liked to drink, and I asked him, my father, to pick grapes so that we could see the process of making the wine. And they kindly said, please come, we will pick the grapes. We watched them make the wine. And the following spring, thank God my father was still there, they sent us a case of the wine that we had made. And
Wow.
so he could see continuity in life through the wine. And I love that you continue to do beautiful things and create things. That's very, very inspiring. Are there things that you've begun to do since your diagnosis you didn't do before?
I pretty much well, first of all, I get out of bed and breakfast, and then I flute. I pick up the flute every day. You know, I am now 76, and 4 years into, well, about maybe 3 years into having this dreaded disease. And I say dreaded because when I say dreaded, it makes it less dreaded somehow, you know, because I'm living with it. It's in me, it's upon me. I've done all the things that I think most people who have this diagnosis have. You go to a shrink and you talk about it, you try to feel better about it. I think what helped me enormously was being able to express myself through the flute in my room. Didn't have to perform. And although I've performed all the way through this, somehow it was something that I got out of bed every morning, and I still do.
Exercise.
And exercise for me, I think, has been fantastic. I mean, I've always exercised, but I get up in the morning, I do floor exercises, I go for hikes. We have the most gorgeous country up here in the woods. And I just exercise constantly, and that helps me enormously. And I would say to anyone who has a disease who can possibly move, just keep moving, just keep moving. It's really important. So that has helped me.
I understand that you have a lot of animals of different types.
Oh boy, do we. We at the moment, well, we have 2 horses. One died last year. My husband was a big equestrian, and we now have 2 very old horses, but they're Priscilla and Dublin, and they're absolutely gorgeous, and they know it. They preen. It's a lot of preening going on. We have 2 dogs. These are all rescue animals. And one of the dogs, and 1 cat who is around my feet right now. So we have a menagerie, and we're part of it. And at night, one of the dogs has her place in the bedroom. The cat sleeps or sometimes sits outside of the room. Another one of the dogs who is really quite old and dithering, we hear her running around downstairs. It's a menagerie, and it's a beautiful thing.
People a lot of times make equivalencies between the flute and bird song and the sound of, excuse me, the sound of birds singing. I imagine being in the countryside, surrounded by trees, that you have birds who come and go. You hear them singing?
Not only do I hear them singing, but I sing with them. I have 2 windows which are right outside of a big tree, and I sing to them and they sing to me. And it's really fun. And then downstairs, we also have, we feed birds, and we have the most gorgeous cardinal, red cardinal you've ever seen. And it is such a privilege to live here.
Have you taken your flute out and played with the birds when they're play your flute?
I have just, stepped outside and see how they answer, particularly up in one of the bedrooms. It's right, I often stand there and see who comes to listen to me. And it's very interesting because they don't seem afraid. And there's a way in which birds cock their heads a little, and they really are listening. And then other times they don't like it. They just go away right away.
So they're like critics in their way.
They are. That's right.
Well,
That's
this
true.
leads me to the fact that I always ask my guests to provide some musical listening recommendations found on the Adagio catalog. And it should not surprise you that one of the recommendations is the opera Die Zauberflöte, the Magic Flute. And
Right.
I imagine you as Papageno with your flute even though it's Tamino who has the flute, but I imagine you as Papageno out with the birds, playing and interacting with the birds. Mozart, I'm guessing, probably is a huge inspiration to you, as he is to so many people. What is it about either his music or the story of Mozart that inspires you?
I think it's his honesty and the straightforward beauty of his thoughts that he was able to put into the hands of musicians and let them play what he wrote. Probably one of the greatest geniuses of all time. And it's just amazing to me how prolific he was, what an interesting life he led, a difficult life in some ways, and in other ways not difficult. I think he's a mystery to me. How did this person, with a father who was difficult, living at a time that was unbelievably difficult to get from point A to point B, etc. And that he was so prolific. It's maybe one of the wonders of the world.
He was. I also noticed that you selected what is typically called Eine kleine Nachtmusik, or the Serenade number 13. When I was a little boy, I didn't hear the German correctly, and I thought they were saying, I'm inclined to Nachtmusik. I before I learned that it was Eine kleine Nachtmusik. Such ubiquitous music, and I had not listened to it for many years, but in preparation for our conversation, I went back to it again. It's glorious. Why,
Mhm.
many things of Mozart that you could have selected, did you select that piece?
I can't remember why it was. It's almost any piece of Mozart that I listen to that knocks me out. Um, and the story of Mozart being schlepped around Europe, having to play for kings and queens while horrible things were going on in his own household, and imagine the difficulty of going from Berlin just to another country. He is maybe one of the wonders of the world.
He is. When people ask me to describe Mozart's music, the way I often discuss it is the following: that when we listen to his music and we feel we're going on a path with him and we seem to know where he's going to go, then he doesn't go there. He goes somewhere else.
Hmm.
Whereas many composers, and this is not a criticism, they go where we think they're going.
Right.
Inevitably, he takes you elsewhere. And at first you think that's not right, but then you realize, of course it's right. He understood the mysteries, as you call it. And I think
Hmm.
he expresses the mystery of the human heart through his music, even without words, better perhaps than any composer or creative artist I've ever come across, including Shakespeare, including the great poets. But
Hmm.
there's something about the absence of words in most cases that his
Hmm.
music just takes you deeper. And so I fully understand why you chose that. Another recording that is selected is Lucia Pop singing both Mozart's operatic music and his sacred. And I'm not a religious person particularly, but his sacred music has that similar effect on me. I don't know how you respond to his sacred music. Um,
For me, Mozart is beauty and for me, happiness. There's a lot of dark Mozart music for sure, especially as he got older, etc., and difficulties in his life. But to me, he's sunshine. No matter what I'm listening to, and it I'll never understand the output of this human being, how he was able to do what he did. And, not always easily, sitting in the kitchen while waiting to go out and play on the clavichord for a whole bunch of people who were talking, you know. And he survived all of that, which is, to me, astonishing. And I would imagine anyone who is a musician or a professional musician feels the same way about music, of Mozart. He just is the epitome of beauty.
I think his operas are among the hardest to put on a stage because of the fast movement of action and emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And putting in visual form, whether it's acting, whether it's makeup and costumes, whether it's scenery, whether it's lighting, what Mozart expresses so quickly but so elegantly makes his operas, to me, the hardest of all to see the stage properly.
Mm-hmm.
That's why often when I teach Mozart, I teach it without the stage. I teach it just as a quick response to the words and to the, if there are words, but especially to the music.
That's
If we may, I would like to have you read the next poem, which is the title of the book, Like Falling Through a Cloud. It's the very first poem in the book. So if you please.
like falling through a cloud. Sometimes when I wake up, it's dark. Where am I? Sometimes I know, and sometimes I have no idea. So I let the night spirits wrap around me, and they whisper to me, don't think, you will remember. I lie very still, and then suddenly, like falling through a cloud, I know I am here.
You said that when you began writing the book after the diagnosis, that you wrote some 25 poems. Was this one of the poems, the first one you wrote, perhaps?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was.
So I found in that poem the crystallization of everything that would follow. To me, it was like the overture to the opera or the very first notes of the first movement of a symphony or a sonata.
Well, that's a real compliment, and I thank you for it.
Because the honesty was right there from the beginning. You said before that you believe in being honest. It's not easy to be honest with oneself. Sometimes it's harder to be honest with oneself than with other people. But what is so refreshing and so inspiring in this book for me is how your honesty helped you unlock all kinds of feelings for yourself. And as a reader, unlock it for me. And I mentioned this before. I hope that everyone listening will get the book Like Falling Through the Cloud, through a Cloud, because it is incredibly lyrical. It's incredibly beautiful and inspiring. It was the closest I've encountered to music in written words in a really, really, really long time. And
Whoa, you just knocked me out.
I guess because
Thank you.
you're a musician and it comes naturally, or maybe you could connect to that. But I sometimes had to put the book down and pause and ask myself, is it music first? Are they words first? Are they both? The poem you read just before is called Words. So I think there are answers in the book to these questions that I raised, but it's the kind of book, since I've read it twice now, that I've shared with other people, because I know that whatever they're dealing with in their life, this particular book will make them see things better in themselves. It was
Right.
kind of like opening, you were talking about light and brilliance and opening lots of windows, and whether the birds were outside singing or not, the light comes in when you read this book. and it was a magical, magical effect. So I know I've thanked you before, but I'm thanking you again because I was deeply, deeply moved. And I don't say that to authors or musicians unless I really genuinely mean that, just so you know. Um, would you want to read the next poem, which is to me a very powerful poem called Getting It Together?
Getting it together. I've made a date with my banker because I hanker to know where things stand when it comes to what I'll hand to my next of kin. So I should begin to keep track of stuff to see if there's enough to pass around when I'm under the ground. I'm not being dramatic, but I can no longer be static about what lies ahead when I'm dead, which oddly I do not dread. Instead, I want to avoid leaving a mess for the family to assess. I'd like them to say she left it this way to keep trouble at bay and to avoid a fray. I don't expect to croak at midnight stroke, but I don't want to be 103, which my mother achieved. I will stick with the plan I've made with my man. When the time seems right, we will have the delight of donning deer suits on the first day of hunting, and we'll go out in the fields and wait to meet our fates. Only I hope the hunters know how to shoot straight.
And in the text, the word straight sort of tumbles down the page. Straight. One of the things that grabbed me in this poem, among many, was I think in the whole book, it's the most rigorous in terms of rhyme and might be considered the more conventional in poetic style. Not that one has to adhere to rhyme, but clearly the rhythms, the rhyming in this was befitting the title, Getting It Together. And that struck me so forcefully that banker, hanker, stand, hand, kin, begin, stuff, enough, around, ground, dramatic, static, ahead, dead. And each rhyming word sets you up for the next powerful rhyming word. And therefore, in reading it, I read it and reread it and reread it because each time so much more came out of it. And so I wanted to ask you, when you play a piece of music that you've played many, many times that has all of that inner language and inner meaning, do you play it as if for the first time, or do you play it as if you've played it many times before? This poem said both things to me, that you start afresh, but you also have to get it together.
That's a very interesting question. I think it varies. You know, sometimes I'm bang on. I feel that I really know where I'm going, what I'm saying. And other times I don't feel that way. One funny thing is that we are in the middle of hunting season right now, and across the yard, the hunters, I can hear them right now as we're talking, which is not something I want to hear, but it's part of life. Yeah.
Do the sounds of the hunters scare your animals?
Yes and no. There's one. Izzy is
She is a hunter.
She is a hunter, so she runs away. We have so much trouble with Izzy, but we adore Izzy. Izzy is something else. She's it's impossible not to adore this dog. One of Dick's children is a
Fly fisherman.
no, not fly. He's a fly fisherman, but
adopts
yeah,
rescue animals.
Rescue animals, and so we get all the rescue animals. And Izzy, when I first met Izzy, I thought she was going to tear my face off because she leapt at me like she wanted to eviscerate me. And she's turned out to be the cuddliest, most loving dog I think that I've ever known. She's if she'd get into bed with us if we allow it, but no.
It was Aristotle who said that dogs have the soul of a philosopher and a poet. And so I find it very interesting living with dogs when I have, and meeting people who live with their dogs. The poetry, the philosophy that these animals communicate, not necessarily with words or sounds, but with their temperament, with their spontaneity. Um, I'm just remembering something I haven't thought about for a while. The great singer Christa Ludwig, when she would teach singing, you would always begin with breathing. And many times there would be nervous tension in the body of the young singer, especially in front of Christa Ludwig. And she would have the singer get down on the floor and pretend to be a dog and the way a dog breathes. Because if you look at dogs, they're not conscious of their breathing, they just breathe.
Mm-hmm.
You, as a flute player, had to learn a special kind of breathing early on. Do you think about breathing when you play the flute, or is it just a natural, spontaneous thing?
By now, it better be natural and spontaneous. But as a kid, I had a teacher who was very strict, not a lot of fun. It took me a while to be able to get out of his grasp, so to speak. And I think that my best teachers were the musicians that I was able to make music with when I went to New York to go to Barnard College, and I started performing with
Jules Baker.
Julius Baker, who was my teacher, and met people like Pinchas Zukerman, etc. And I learned a great deal from my colleagues, for which I'm very grateful.
Ron Powell.
Yeah.
So right now in New York City, where I am, in New York State, where you are, it's a brilliantly sunny day in winter. What a lot of people elsewhere don't know about New York City and this part of the United States is that in winter it can be very, very sunny. And there's a special brightness and sunshine in winter. The daylight is shorter, but the sun is beautiful. So I'm going to ask if you could conclude with one of the most beautiful poems in the book called A Super Sunny Sunday. Today is Friday, but this is applicable every day.
And it's Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you. You too. A super sunny Sunday, almost August, and the tomatoes are bulging on their vines. The flowers continue to burst toward the sky in colors that astound, while on the ground our once hardy kale has been ripped out by rabbits who attack at dawn and are gone in a flash, leaving the crop tattered and torn. Nothing lasts forever. Not kale or tomatoes or cucumbers, or the glorious flowers that fill our fields, or the people we adore. And though I know my days are numbered, I feel unencumbered by thoughts of my demise. I do not embrace my inevitable decline, but I'm determined to find a way to make the rest of my stay on this problematic planet filled with light and love and music. As for the deer suit I promised to don, I don't think I'll put it on. Not now, not yet. I'm not ready. I feel steady, and I have a strategy to keep on keeping on, which is simple. Wake up, fetch the flute, summon up syrinx, give thanks for another day, and then play on, play on, play on.
Eugenia Zukerman, you play on magnificently. I thank you for all the gifts that you've given me and everyone who has known you and continue to give these gifts to all of us. I wish you well. Happy Hanukkah. Are you having latkes today?
Well, not today, tonight. We are.
Good that you could wait till tonight. So the final question is, with latkes, do you have applesauce or sour cream?
I don't know. What are we doing tonight?
Applesauce.
Applesauce.
Applesauce. New York State applesauce.
Correct.
And apples are good here.
It's called the Big Apple for a reason. For people who don't know, New York State has more apple varieties than any place in the world. We have more than 350 local varieties. And it's one of the great pleasures to eat an apple a day in New York State.
It's true. And to give an apple to one of the horses.
Also,
Yeah.
do they have a preference? Do they like sweet apples, bitter apples? Do they not really care?
They're not choosing.
They do not care. Just shove it in their mouth and they're happy.
All I can say is my thanks to both of you. I encourage readers to read this book like falling through a cloud as soon as you can. It's been my holiday gift to many people already. And Eugenia, I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such an honor. Thank you.